Good morning, class. This is Shams, your lecturer from MIT, Manukau Institute of Technology, Logistics Level 2. I have met a few of you last week on Wednesday in class, but I didn't have the chance to meet all of you. Since you are not all connected to Canvas yet, I decided to record Unit Standard 402, which is Demonstrate Knowledge of the Retail Sector in New Zealand, and upload it to my YouTube channel so that I can send it to your transition coordinator, who will actually send the link to you. This will be uploaded later to Canvas as well, and you can retrieve it at any time. So the 2 or 3 people who were there in class last week on Wednesday have actually gone through some of the slides, but I'm just going to repeat it anyway, just for those who weren't in class at this stage. Let me just take you quickly. This is your canvas, and that's just a snapshot of what it looks like. You would always go to modules here, and then you would click on the current one. You'll only see at the moment the US Unit Standard 402 available to you. So the way I work is that I work off the PowerPoint, but you also have a course workbook. The course workbook has the same material as the PowerPoint. It's just got more stuff, just more in depth, and that's for you to work on. Usually in class, I would ask you to have it open so that we can do the activities together, give you some time to do it. Since we are not in class at the moment, so what I'm going to do is just take you through half of the PowerPoint and then record another video doing the other half, and ask you, once you have access to the workbook, once we're back in class, or even if the lockdown extends and we are not back in class, hopefully I'll get you connected to Canvas. If we don't get you connected to Canvas, I'll probably email Emma with this document so that you can have your workbook ready and do it as you watch the explanation that I will provide you with. Okay, so let's start by clicking on the PowerPoint and just trying to view it here. Let's exit the screen and just come here a bit. Okay, so I'm just experimenting with this video recording. Okay, so here is your unit standard, demonstrate knowledge of the retail sector in New Zealand. You would think, okay, how is retail sector is related to logistics? Well, it is part of the supply chain. So when we talk logistics, we're talking about the movement of products from the source where they get made, whether when they get manufactured, until they get to the customer. Now, from that point to this point, there is a lot of processes in place. There are documentations, there's a lot of work, paperwork, there is transportation of the products themselves, there is a lot of taxes involved too. We call this process from the point of manufacturing until the product gets in the hand of the end user. We call this whole process the supply chain. So retail sits just before it gets to the customer, sits on that place of the supply chain. So just before the product gets to the customer, because through retail you get your products. So moving on to the next slide. Here's just a snapshot of the size of the New Zealand retail industry from 2020, last year. Retail in New Zealand has a turnover of $57.8 billion per annum per year. So that the turnover means what the revenue, what it gets, what this industry, how much money does it make. And so as you can see, it makes a lot of money in a year. Now this this money comes from 27,000 business, and it employs 220,000 people across New Zealand. So Now, this is a big number of population. It's almost 250,000 only in this sector, only in the retail. So imagine how big this industry is in New Zealand, because we're all together 5 million, give and take. We've got kids, we've got people who are not employed, we've got older people, retired population, and if we just hypothetically say there's like 1 million people who are not considered working people, then we are left with 4 millions, and quarter of the 4 and from one industry is quite a huge percentage. So that tells you the importance of the retail sector in New Zealand. So as you can see here, it says retailers are one of the largest constituents of commercial tenants. So commercial tenants means businesses that lease properties, like lease a shop in a mall or lease a shop outside in a business park and so on, providing a significant source of income to provide landlords, real estate syndicates, and some of New Zealand's largest pension funds. So it pours into all these economical benefits. You can refer to this later on when you have access to the PowerPoint. We can also look at the PDF that has all these figures in more details. Okay, let's look at some retail definitions. The retail industry is a large industry that exists in New Zealand and all over the world. Obviously, many millions of people work in retail, and many trillions of dollars per year is generated in sales revenue across the globe, obviously. Retail is a sale of goods from a business to consumer or to customer for their own use. So when we talk retail, we're talking shops, whether it's a physical shop that you can walk into, or maybe it's a virtual shop, like online shops that you can buy online. It is still considered retail. A retailer is a person or a business that you purchase goods from or products. Retailers normally don't manufacture their own items, normally, but we'll see later that they can. There are some manufacturers that have their own retail shops. That's just a different area. But generally speaking, retailers don't make their own products. They get them from a supplier, from multiple suppliers, not from one source. And then they put them together in their store, and then they sell them to the customer. So they purchase goods from a manufacturer or a wholesaler and sell these goods to customer in small quantities. Now, this is a good starting point to understand what is a manufacturer and what is a wholesaler. Now, a manufacturer is simply the business or the entity or the company that makes the products, actually make it. But a wholesaler is again a person or a business that buys from the manufacturer in big quantities. So they don't buy a 1 unit, 1 item or 2 items or even 10. They don't buy anything, any amount that is very small. They buy in bulk, so maybe over 1,000 units. That's why they call them wholesalers. Now they buy them, and then the wholesalers, what they do, and in very rare cases, they sell to the end user straight away. Very rarely. Usually, they distribute to different retailers, and that's why they're able to buy in bulk, because they have their own channels to sell to the retailers, who will then sell to the end consumer. Retailing is the distribution process of a retailer obtaining goods or services and selling them to customers for use, normally at a higher price. We will see later why is it at a higher price. Because as the product moves through the supply chain, there will be a lot of extra cost, a lot of markup prices that gets added on to the product until it gets to the hand of the consumer. By the time it gets there, it is marked at a higher price, because whoever is selling it at the end has to cover their cost and add a markup, which is their profit. So every time the product moves through the chain, and every time someone or some business buy it, they have to cover their cost of buying and then add markup to it so that they can sell it and still make a profit. That's the simplest explanation of it. Right. Usually, if we were in class, we'd take 2 minutes challenge and write down, like to put a timer up and write down how many different retailer brands can we list. We did this last week in class. I would probably, it's in your booklet as well later on when you get to see it. You just put your timer up and think of all retailer stores that you can think of, the physical ones and even the virtual ones, the ones online. So here it is. If you go and do it, then you would probably, seeing that we're in New Zealand, would probably put down some or even a lot of different ones of these retailers here. Example, you've got New World, Life Pharmacy, Kathmandu, Max, Glassons, Hallenstein's Brother, Macpac, Pack and Save. You've got Countdown. You've got your supermarkets and your pharmacies, your jewelry, the Michael Hill, your furniture store, Farmers is a department store. All of these, even though they offer different products, different types of products, they are all considered retailers. And at a later stage, you will see that retailers come in different types, and we'll talk about the types of retailers and what each type offer, what sort of products they offer, and what sort of layout. We've got the process of retailing. So as I was saying, that supply chain, here is the process, the normal process, the generic one, which is like the, on average, this is what happens. So the manufacturer has a plant or, like a factory, produces the goods or make them using machines, raw materials. Raw materials, that means materials that haven't been yet made into something. So let's say there's a factory that makes bread, loaf, and cakes. Now, what are the raw materials? The raw materials would be flour, sugar, baking powder, all the ingredients that get into, or yeast, they get into the in making the bakery stuff. So these are the raw materials. So they've got machines and also they've got labor. And labor here obviously means the people who work there and contribute to the making of the product. So factories use raw materials, people, and machines or machineries to actually make the products. And once it gets made, now the manufacturer doesn't make small quantities, they make huge quantities because they want to cover, again, their cost of the making and make some profit. Now then they sell it to the wholesalers who buys in bulk from them, and the wholesalers would then distribute these products to different retailers. So let's say a wholesaler buys of this bakery factory and goes to distribute to supermarkets. They might have a deal with Countdown and Pack and Save and not have a deal with New World, for example. And therefore you'll see the products of this manufacturer only probably at Pack and Save and only at Countdown, and you will not see it at New World. And if you do grocery shopping, you would recognize this, this phenomenon, because you'll see some kind of brands of the sugar and the flour get offered in let's say in Pack and Save, but you can't see them at Countdown. Or sometimes you see them in Pack and Save in New World, but you don't see them at Countdown, and so on. So let's say this wholesaler has a deal with 2 supermarkets who are considered retailers, and they got distributed to them in smaller quantities, not as big as they got it, because they have 2 places to distribute to. And the reason is that the retailers usually won't buy from the manufacturer straight away, because retailers have done their own study about the volume of sales that they can make on a certain product, and they probably figured out, let's say Countdown figured out, oh well, I can't sell more than 20 or let's say more than 50 units of bread loaf in a day, and therefore in a week.